Ladies and gentlemen, this morning, Mr. Kevin Sheedy. Kevin, welcome to the show. Welcome to Become Your Own Superhero. How are you?
No, very good. It's been a very different year, but an exciting, challenging year for people like myself. But hopefully, my life's experiences get you through it all. And most of my life, I'm always thinking positive, so I have no problem with the COVID-19 from that point of view, a mental point of view I'm talking about. Obviously, feel very sorry for the people that have lost their lives and their families. But in general, no, I'm going okay.
Well, you look okay. You look healthy. You look like you got some colour in your skin. Looks like you've been out and about doing a bit of gardening by the sounds.
I'm a gardener, yes, and that's been a blessing in disguise. You know, I sort of grew up in the Botanical Gardens in Melbourne, so I lived in that area. So between Faulkner Park and the Botanical Gardens was probably just a home base for us kids. You know, I'm one of the 7 kids, and we had a very small house in the 50s and 60s, so we got out there and had a bit of fun.
Well, I must say, I live in South Bank, Kevin, and the Botanical Gardens is my favourite place in the whole world as well. And we can't get in there at the moment, which makes me really appreciate it when we do. So I'm looking forward to that reopening.
Well, a lot of people walk around it, don't go in it. They're like a goat track, so they need to get a life, some of them.
Well,
they're trying to keep themselves fit, but don't forget the mental freshness and vibrance of plants and scent, so I've always felt that it's Melbourne. Melbourne's got 3 great properties, obviously that Botanical Gardens, I think the Shrine as a historical property, and the MCG. Yeah, the MCG I think is an incredible sort of meeting place for us, Victorians, Melburnians in particular, and all Australians when they come to watch some of the internationals, and that whole sort of valley of the Yarra River there with all the tennis stadiums and rugby and soccer. We've got the lot. So it's a great area.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, I'm actually from New Zealand, Kevin. I've been here for half my life now, and my father's from Melbourne, and it's become my adopted home. I'm a naturalised citizen, and regarding the tan, I actually have at the moment on Strava the record 3rd fastest downhill Anderson Street 400-metre stretch. That nearly set my feet on fire. I did earlier in the year. So there's a challenge for anyone listening that's attacking the tan anytime recently.
Well, when I played at Richmond, we trained that tan all the time. And then when I went to Essendon, I used to bring the Bombers over to the other side of Melbourne to make sure that we were going to not miss the treasures of what that tan run does and the build-up of the hill running. And I remember one stage we carried logs around the tan, when I coached Essendon in the early days, they said had probably missed a pain threshold. So we did a lot of different things, got criticised for it and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, we tried things a lot different than what we normally would in football.
Back when men were men.
Well, I don't know what men are, but we go okay. Yeah, the girls are probably a bit smarter, but we do a little bit more of the physical work.
Well, the women are not to be underestimated around the tan. My fiance can power up that hill like a billy goat. She's quite extraordinary. So, and there's a really beautiful
some
smell.
Of the greatest athletes I've ever seen are women athletes. In my lifetime, and I grew up I was about 10 years of age in the '56 Olympics, and to see Betty Cuthbert and these girls run out and win 3 gold medals, we had about 9.5 million people, I think maybe 10 million people in Australia at that time. And, we punched very well in the sporting arena for a country of now 25 million. We always seem to be up somewhere in the top 10. So it's an amazing effort by a very small country's population.
Well, who are some of your other favourite female athletes that come to mind?
Yvonne Goolagong. I thought she was sensational. To see an Aboriginal girl just find get a tennis racket and come from nowhere out the country New South Wales and get to the stage in the English Open tennis. Like when you see that happen, that's a magnificent achievement. And of course, when you look at Jessica Watson, I think she's been incredible to sail around the world at 15. I mean, they're very courageous. You know, I mean, I talk about, you know, men talking about how tough they are in footy fields, but I felt that was one of the most courageous efforts I've ever seen from an Australian teenager, 15, 16, unbelievable. So that's raw courage in itself, and an amazing confidence in one's ability at that age, no matter what you're talking about, whether it be, you know, I mean, we talk about Columbus sailing, you know, from Europe into the East Indies and here is in the Asian seas. You know, we're talking about Columbus. I know it's a long time ago, but I mean, this girl sailed around the world 15. So I don't know whether she'll get the credit and praise that that young woman should get from world people. 15.
Well, even if it's not apparent straight away, I think what that'll probably teach her, having experienced not that, but some other major challenges physically that sort of put me out of my comfort zone more than I ever thought, is that it'll teach her to believe that she can do anything. And I think then that might have an impact further down her life, you know, and she will
Yeah,
inspire inadvertently, you know, a whole race of people. The affinity for the Indigenous people, Kevin, where did that come from? Do you know?
from myself point of view.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, look, I like people for a start, and you know, I mean, I've been around the world a fair bit and had a look around, and you know, but early days, I mean, I didn't know about Aboriginal people when I was a kid because it was known where I grew up in South Yarra, and
Yeah.
well, I wasn't, you know, I mean, and I think back, I mean, there's only 500,000 Indigenous people alive now after 40 plus thousand years, which is just a shame, but. You know, so I think that I've always wanted to look at the history of Australia and how it was formed and what happened, and then along the way, I thought, well, yeah, I mean, these guys have been smashed, you know, by obviously, you know, the colonisation of Australia. No different than the, you know, the Indian nations of America, when you know the white people come in, whether it was the French or the English or the British or whatever. So when I finally got to meet them, I really liked them. You know, I thought, wow, you know, gee, I went to Darwin when I was in my very early 20s and met some beautiful Indigenous people there, and then come back and I thought, well, if I ever get to coach a team one day, and I didn't think I'd be coaching Essendon for that long, you know, but let alone Essendon or any AFL or VFL Victorian team, I just thought I'd bring the team up. I could have been a country team, it could have been coaching in South Australia, or whatever. So I promised them I'd bring my team up. Well, it happened to be Essendon in the end, so I couldn't. It was a bit bigger than what I thought. But and I'm talking 1970s, you know, very early. Good people.
Yeah, well, like when you compare them to the New Zealand Maori, for example, we've had one particular guest on recently, Nahihi Aotearoa Boudoir, who's got the full face muku and obviously very entrenched in the culture of New Zealand, and spoke about that as well. And the New Zealand Maoris maybe didn't put up with as much shit when the white man arrived, and that sort of helped them. I think probably get more back from the government, and they're a lot more, seem to be a lot more well respected in New Zealand than say the Aboriginal Indigenous population over here. Just an observational point of view.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, they had a few wars against the other islanders, didn't they?
Well, they weren't
The
actually the
Maoris.
original settlers. They had the Morioris, who then the Maoris arrived and ate them.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to get rid of the people that are there in that place.
Bit of cannibalism around the world. That was happening in a lot of different parts of the world in the early centuries, I hear. But look, you know, obviously civilization's changed since, and you know, I've been involved in lots of different areas, and I'm learning still. You know, I'm in my early 70s, and I'm enjoying that. You know.
And I believe you were largely responsible for the inspiration for the Dream Night at the G or Dreamtime.
Yep. Well, I mean, to me, that was important. I'm working on a couple of projects now that we need to look at, and so when I hang up from here and get off, you know, our little session, I'll be looking at different areas of the game that I'm involved in. Obviously, it's AFL, and what we can do better and smarter, and maybe an Aboriginal boy might get the benefits of that. We don't know. It'll be a great debate, but this is a situation where you say to yourself, well, what can we do and what should we do that we're not doing? And sometimes it's a lot easier than what you think. And all you got to do is pursue it and then have the patience and get the people on side to roll with that. Now, that's can be difficult. And sometimes, the Anzac Day was probably one of the easiest days to get when I went and saw the RSL. And Bruce Ruxton loved the idea. And of course, we now have a game called the Celebration of Anzacs, Australian New Zealand Army Corps. So it's a nation of New Zealand and Australia in the First World War. And just, recently, obviously, when you think we could do it better, and I tried to do that. I tried to get a game between New Guinea and New Zealand before Collingwood and Essendon on the same day. And I just couldn't get that time slot. I said, make it an hour game. I don't give a damn. But, we know that both these countries deserve to be on the Anzac stage here in Melbourne. Now, we can keep re-looking at that because sometimes you just got to be ready to switch on and make sure you can do that. Now, there'd be nothing better than having New Zealand play New Guinea in AFL on Anzac Day ahead of the Collingwood and Essendon game. So, to me, it's a bit of theatre and a bit of history. And I think that, if you can create opportunities and games out there that can make people just think about their life and who actually gave their lives up to give us the one we've got now, sort of thing. So, and obviously right now we've got our medical staff over here have been incredible in this COVID-19, putting themselves in very dangerous situations. So I look at all that and I think, well, we've got to look at that when we get back to normality and see that, maybe we can have a game for the fantastic medical staff of Australia.
Sounds like a great initiative, Kevin. Looking forward to that myself. Being able to support a New Zealand side in some kind of AFL will be exciting. After being a long-suffering Melbourne supporter for 17 years.
You just picked the wrong club, mate.
I got given the wrong club. But I've still
you better go. Are you still friends with that person, or was your in-laws, or what?
Oh, it's sketchy. Yeah, it's a very sketchy relationship. But once they come good, I've still got my scarf, and it's a law of numbers. I think they'll eventually come around. So
long time, 1964.
Well, I even
you weren't even thought of.
No, I wasn't even thought of. But I thought when I arrived in Melbourne, I better do the right thing and
Change the town's name.
Well, and ensconce myself in the game. So I actually played 2 seasons in the back pocket for the Bulleen Cobras. So, yeah, in the D4 comp. And I kicked 2 behinds in 2 years. I don't know how, but even back pockets can kick a few goals by the sounds of things.
You can. It's always about a little bit of looseness, getting away from your man. And because the Rovers, they don't think that back pockets have the right to go down past the midfield and have a shot. You'll catch them unawares like that.
And what about your true love that no one really knows, Kevin? What about cricket? What about your career with cricket and nearly making the Australian side, being bumped off by Jim Higgs?
Well, that was a fun time. But look, I love my career. I love Richie Benaud. I thought Benaud was a fantastic leader for Australia when I was a kid. He and Bill Laurie and Neil Harvey, these sorts of guys. Alan Connolly, we had a wonderful test side in those days, and Wally Grout, he's a wicketkeeper from Queensland in the Shields, and then he went into the Australian Test arena, and it was a fantastic wicketkeeper from Queensland. But look, I picked football because the odds were on my side. If you're only a leg spinner, we'll only pick one, and in Melbourne they picked 168 players by height in the 12 teams. So 14 people about 14 people my height in the 12 teams in Melbourne. So 12, 14 is 168. So I went with my maths. It's the only time I was ever any good at maths.
That's a really strategic plan. I never would have thought of that.
That's okay. Well, I try to think, as I said, think of things you're not thinking of, and you never know what you can do. But anyway, so that was a great learning experience on mathematics. And as soon as you get up and you have a career and you move into coaching, and then all of a sudden they change the mathematics on you called AFL draft and trade. So you move your mathematics of that over into algebra. How to swap a player for 2 draft picks, or a couple of boxes in the draft, or pick 30 and pick 50, or take the body you see. So there's a lot of differences that you can relate back to your early education, and that's why I like it.
Well,
And
you've
it's
been.
simple as that.
It is as simple as that. But you've been quoted as saying that you're a futurist thinker. What are some of the things on the horizon for Kevin Sheedy in the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, right now I'm writing the rules for 2030. What I'd like to see, probably after I'm not here, for my grandkids to watch a game that I think's just gone into a little bit of disarray. I think it's got a bit ugly, and we kick less goals now, and the full forwards don't kick goals as well as what they should. Our field passing is not as good as either side of the body. I think it should be better. So I'm looking at different aspects of how do we clean the game up a little bit and reshape it for people and other countries to get to like it a bit better than soccer, gridiron, and maybe rugby or rugby league. So it's like it's like a different menu. If you like pasta, or you like steak or fish, to me, it's about a menu, and I think we can get a better menu in our game.
Will that be your greatest legacy if it comes about, do you think?
Oh, I wouldn't have thought so. I don't know what I mean. That won't ever come about. I'm a dreamer, so a lot of dreams don't even get on the field. Some of the dreams I have, but the deal in the end is you keep trying.
Well, what are you most proud of in your whole life so far?
I'm very happy that we put a AFL Sports Ready traineeship in, which is we got through $1 surcharge on every finals ticket since the early 1990s. So we've got about 16,000 kids who got a job through that scheme, AFL Sports Ready, and that's pretty powerful. It's got nothing to do with footy, but we collect some $500,000 or 600,000, whatever it is for the year for the final series. So every ticket in a final series, I think $1 goes off it onto a kid's job. I think that's probably one of the best things I've enjoyed doing, and it's there forever, never to be changed. Beautiful. Both governments finally liked it. That's very hard to do. Oh. Yeah, so anyway, look, it was great, and we did it with Bill Kelty and Simon Crean and the late Ron Evans and Lindsay Fox. Those sort of guys got together and thought, yeah, we can get this. This is not a bad deal. And every year, about probably 600 kids get girls and boys, obviously, get. I think it's split down the middle, about half, of the 16,000, and about 2,000 of those Indigenous boys and girls get traineeships. Now, yeah, I'd probably say it's about the best thing I've enjoyed watching. Obviously, I'm a patron of it now and keep an eye on it and make sure things are going well. But, it's good. You can do something, put back something into society other than just being a damn footy coach and a football player.
Well, I think it's a great initiative because every single one of those kids will know where that came from, and hopefully will want to give back, to reinvest, and that'll pay itself forward, and you got that compounding interest effect, I suppose. And from a political point of view, Kevin, I'll throw a challenging one at you. If you were the overriding prime minister of the country with full veto rights, what would you do in the world today?
Probably not listen to many other countries at the moment. We haven't got many great leaders around the world at the present time. I think we for a 25 million population and country, it's very demanding because it's a huge island. Australia, it's about as big as America and as large as Europe. Without the population, our taxes are very awkward because we've got to have infrastructure. And I agree that both parties need to reinvest, in particular more so now than ever, because last time we had a recession, we need to really reinvest our superannuation money into our own countries, probably more than ever, particularly after this COVID-19. So I think we've got to make sure that we get that right first off, immediately, as soon as we are back on deck, and try to fix up what is basically a flu out of China, if you could say that. People call it COVID-19. I don't have anything to do with that because that's somebody's name that said that's what it is. But really, it's the second time out of China that we've had one of these diseases. And I think SARS was the other one about a decade ago. So that's very, that's concerning, because a lot of people have died, around the world. Where numbers here in Australia are probably in the top 5 or 10 anywhere in the world out of populations of 25 plus, millions. So our country's been very, very good, but obviously it's hurt us economically, because to keep that health somewhere stabilised, and in particular where I live in Victoria, it's been probably more destabilised than anybody, but we seem to be getting on top of that, so that's good. So back into your question of what would you do, and to me it's about sort of find out what needs to be done, and then vote the right way as a country, and of course, 75 years ago we actually stopped Japan coming into our country after the bombing of obviously Darwin, and I found it extremely incredible that we sold the port of Darwin to China. Now I find that it's just a lack of common sense, and would be very disturbing to many Australians, and you'd like to know just technically, or how could that happen? And I know that it's a political commentary pop perhaps, but I just don't have a bar of that at all, and I specifically love to know, if I was Prime Minister, I'd love to know exactly every development and financial agreement with other countries, so to make sure that, under the Australian population's noses, that we're not selling our country out. We do need investment, there's no problem with that. Most countries do. But I think we need a controlled, wise investment. So that's what I'll be looking at more internally than externally. And if it's externally, who's wanting to get hold of the land mass of Australia? It'd be like the Americans rolling into probably California when the Spanish had it. You go back in the history of that, So look, it's it's an amazing country, Australia. We've got a wealth of raw material. I speak to many of the mining groups. I fly over to Perth and head up into the Pilbara and speak to many of the workers there. And so I've been to just about most of the mines talking, and I've really enjoyed that, because you are very close to the working people that have helped run the country's finances. And I've enjoyed that learning experience.
You lived an extraordinary life by anyone's count, Kevin, and I'm sure life has not been without its challenges. And we spoke offline regarding the pregnancy challenges that my fiance and I had with regards to some miscarriages and even a life-threatening ectopic pregnancy that happened. I know there's been some challenges in your life over the course of your many years. What are some of the areas that you've struggled with the most?
Oh, well, I struggle with most in regard to
Anything.
if you looked at different areas. Well, early doors, you'd have to. Well, my dad died very young, 50 years of age, very young. Of course, when you're sort of 16 or 17, you think your dad's old. I'm 72, and I think I'm still damn young. So your head space changes as you live your life. That was early doors, very frustrating and annoying with that. Obviously, I got married later, more than earlier. So I got married in my 30s. My sister lost a baby at birth, which was shattering for her, my older sister. Then my other sister lost a baby girl at 2.5 with a disease just floating in the air, and the baby died. A young child died. And of course, Geraldine and I had miscarriages. We had 2 miscarriages, and then my youngest daughter, Jessica, lost a bub after about 25, 26 weeks. So they're the differences that make footy just park it, forget about it. And I've had many players and their wives and girlfriends go through difficult periods. Because everybody thinks you're just a footy coach, they don't think you're a human being, and because they see you just out on the TV set, ranting and raving and trying to win a game when you mucked it up or whatever. I don't see the actual aspect of it. So in our garden, I've got a beautiful garden here because I always learned that if you're going to do something that you like, then so I bought an acre when I retired at playing, and I make my own little botanical gardens, and every one of my grandkids has a garden or a tree named after them. And the young girl, obviously Maisie, that Jessica lost, we had our funeral, and we went through naming Maisie because that's the grandmother's name. So we did that, and we did the best we could in the circumstances to support Jess and John. And I think in the end, so I got a beautiful little garden there, Maisie's garden. I got Ruby and Oscar's trees, and I got the Cabbage Patch Kids, the boys, Oscar and Tom and Ollie. They got their garden down there. And I got my other granddaughter, Charlotte's Pass. So I've got all beautiful flowers going through there because she's the oldest, and she'll pick it up quick that it's a pretty little area for her when she comes out here. So everybody's got a piece of the property, okay? And then of course, it makes you feel better inside.
Well, I wasn't expecting that, Kevin, and thank you for sharing that, by the way. I think the power of you talking about that will really empower people. We had a guest, Ryan Harris, the Australian fast bowler, come on and was very candid about the challenges him and his wife had 7 rounds of IVF before they were able to even get pregnant the first time, and then they were able to have 2 kids since. And he was talking about how blessed he was being in a financial position to be able to afford that. And I suppose the thing I love about hearing these kind of stories is that, it's so commonplace that the more we share this kind of information, the easier it is for people to deal with. And I know mental health is very, very big on your radar. You've been very open talking about the mental health of the AFL. And I want to run something by you that I think you may not have had much or may not have thought about too much with regards to mental health. And it is that I believe, having gone through my own health journey, I really truly believe that the majority of the mental health issues that we are experiencing, not just in sport, but in society, are dietary related. And I'm just curious to know whether you've explored that area at all.
Look, I'll be honest, I haven't. But mental health was something I grew up with. And my grandfather was in charge of the Kew Mental Hospital, and my father was a male nurse there. And my mother was a nurse, and I have a daughter, and 3 of my aunties were nurses. So we're into and have been in the caring factor of life a lot more on the Sheedy side. And but look, there are many different aspects of mental health, and I have never honestly ever thought about the dietary implications and of that, but there could be something here, and I don't know, to be honest. It's hard to try to get to know everything that's going around our world and our life today, obviously. But I'll be interested in the outcomes, to be honest. But I think, look, the areas that I felt that and have felt even stronger is that, when we have our men and women come back from the war zones and we don't look after them, I find that absolutely disgraceful. And so, I do a bit of work for fundraising for Bravery Trust in the Defence Forces, and soldier on when I can in 2 different areas. I think that really when I get back into full throttle and we've got the game back up and running again, I'll keep knocking on the door with helping these organisations to make sure that we do look after our Defence Force people when they come back out of war zones. Not enough's read and spoken about what happens over in Afghanistan over the years. Totally different in Vietnam and the First and Second World War and the Korean War. So I think they've been sort of just put in the cupboard, and I don't like that. And that's where you get a lot of mental stress too. And like having that relationship. I mean, when we went and visited my grandparents, it was at the Kew Cottage. The beautiful Victorian home is where my grandfather and mother lived, on the premises there in Kew in Melbourne. And of course, we thought they owned the whole property because we were only sort of 6 and 8 and 10 years of age. But there were certain areas we were never allowed to go to because of the mental disabilities there of some people. And that's sort of, as a 10-year-old kid, sort of, wow, what's that mean? So it was always there. And then my grandfather went up and then took over and helped run Sunbury Mental Hospital, which is now a university. So it's always been there in my mind of when you can help people, help them, And I think that, I've been on this Zoom over the last few months with the bushfire people that have been burnt out over from Gippsland right up through the Bega Valley. And I spoke to a group of people in Bega that have, got a long way to go. Homes have been burnt down. People lost most things. And we're talking about something like, 1,000 kilometres of highway. And they're sitting back there with lost most things, many of them, and then been smashed by COVID. So we shouldn't forget them either. There'll be a mental stress down there in that sort of neck of the woods, as we would say in Australia. And so there's a lot to be done. And there's a lot to be done to thank the CFA after what they've been able to do and helping. And of course, this is not just Australia. I mean, worldwide, probably, California's got the worst fires they've had in the history of their being, And I mean, probably America's only 100 years older than Australia. We're two very young countries, So, and the reason they were very, very quickly populated is they technically, the immigration policies in America in 1900, they brought, I think, 12 million people into America from overseas through Ellis Island in the first 10 years of the 1900s. And that's what really populated their nation quicker than what we've done. So there's a lot of study and history that, you need to do when you're out there advising or chatting to people that a lot of other countries have done really well and found difficulties through all the times of their life, the decades of their life as a nation, that is. And this is a worldwide. I mean, we talk about 100 years ago, the Spanish flu. 100 years ago, and it decimated, a lot of countries. And in many ways, that First World War, many felt that Germany lost the war because of the Spanish flu. They just lost so many people that died, not because of the war, but of the flu at that period around that time. So you just keep reading and finding out, what we got to keep our heads above water here and say, okay, now let's, get back ready to go. I'm energizing myself, ready to when the country opens up again, that we give each other the support we need to. And that's the most important thing I feel I can do in the latter years of my life.
Well, it's you're right, Kevin, and I think we need more people with more energy, and the area of health and well-being is something that's really close to my heart, with regards to having gone through my own health journey, and I've been surrounding myself with people that are far more educated than I on the subject. I'll be really happy to introduce you to some of that content offline, and to start wrapping your head around it, because one of the major issues that we are facing as a country and in the Western world is the scourge of diabetes. And Australia is on track to spend 100% of its GDP on type 2 diabetes in the year 2039, which is 19 years from now. And especially in the Indigenous populations, they are being decimated by the metabolic dysfunction of type 2 diabetes and the complications that arise from that. They think, Alzheimer's is the third diabetes. And all of this is preventable and reversible in many cases with the change in diet. So happy to take that offline and share some of that content with you. It's really fascinating.
Well, look, I'll be honest. We live longer now than ever we've ever had as a nation. Most people, if you look at the records and the history records of death, times, life spans. So if you don't take a look at the food we eat and the water and how we live, and I think we have done reasonably well, obviously, reasonably well, is that female have lived longer than in the history of the whole of Australia. We are living longer. So, and the reason is we've got to keep learning and take our health. I often write in an autograph, your health's your wealth. Keep smiling and pass them on, because happiness is important also. but I always write all the best in health and happiness. I put health first because if you're dead, well, you can't be happy. So just,
Depending how miserable
I'm
your
just
life.
saying, I'm trying to make it simplistic. That's all. But all the best in health and happiness.
Well,
Health first.
you're without your health, you don't have anything else really. You can't offer anything. You don't have any energy to do
It.
anything. I think you're right, Kevin. We are living longer, but I think some of the epidemiology, when we go right back to the hunter gatherer lives, they're finding bones of people in their 80s and 90s with full sets of teeth, with no fillings, proper evolved jaw lines from eating the right nutrition. And when we compare ourselves to the last couple of 100 years, certainly since the agricultural revolution, when we started introducing grains and things that sometimes actually aren't actually that good for us, which I find really interesting. And as a fan of history, like you are, it's really important that we pay attention to what we used to do.
Well, they let you out of New Zealand, did they?
They
No,
certainly did.
yeah. Well, look, I've enjoyed all this, having a chat, and good luck with everything and that you're doing, and obviously connecting the world and connecting Australia and New Zealand through, Zooms, which have become now a way of life a bit. And I'll probably do about 4 a week now. I've done a lot of Zooms lately, and it's been a great education for myself and talking to a lot of different companies, and you keep learning it whilst you're sitting in the living room at home looking out over. I've got a beautiful little billabong swimming pool and very relaxing. I could be sitting down there at the big pond at the Botanical Gardens, mate. But it's my way of enjoying my little castle. Okay.
Well,
Cheers.
Kevin, I just wanted to say a huge thank you on behalf of all our listeners and all our watchers. I know that off the record, you give of yourself tirelessly, and you're always putting your hat in the ring to promote some really important thing, and you're not demanding any money for it. So we want to try and get this out as much as we can to promote and support what you're doing and the initiatives that you're behind as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kevin Sheedy.